Hello everyone, welcome. I just made another cup of coffee. And this is going to be section 1.1 of Chyan's Coloso class. I'm probably going to make this forewarning because I forgot to in the intro video, or I might just tack it on later, but these videos are going to be taking more of a laid back tone. I might do some editing and splicing where need be if I really start going off topic, or if I kind of zone out, don't really know what I'm saying, but otherwise I'm taking these really casually. I'll save the formalities for a review video once I'm done with all the courses. So for this one, obviously, I went over all of this at the disclaimer video for the start of this playlist, but just keep note, I will restrict the availability of both the videos and this document per request, because my goal is to shine a light on a valuable resource and my appreciation for both Coloso, the platform, and the artist, and not necessarily to undermine the work that they've done. But without all that out of the way, section 1.1 is discover your style by understanding illustration, and in the document I will link this video to the document so we can have some easy back and forth. So obviously most of 1.1 was an introduction, first lecture. A lot of it was really interesting, getting the sort of the backstory or the experience kind of being told by Chyan. Really what it serves is a credibility stance for Chyan, helps establish them and their experience, which is really interesting, and it was very insightful to listen to. So I highly recommend it, just listening through a large part of the lecture and taking note about it. But otherwise, it's just a precursor to the lesson itself, so I'm not going to include it in the document in the video. So the main topics were character design, concept art, and illustration. Really the big thing was the intention to draw as intended, which is repeatable and intentional. This whole point is really just being adaptable and the importance of that, as well as just drawing from imagination. So he clarifies more in this about the drawing process, which comes in two processes, which is going to be composition and output. So really composition is going to be, what do you think of inside your head when you have an idea, and how does it look to you? What styles and aspects can you really draw from your imagination? And then where it comes to the output, which is the literal output of the drawing. What are you doing with your hands, or I guess whatever else you're drawing with, and how does it look compared to what you had envisioned? And the goal is to get both to an ideal result. So with conceptualization / composition, there exists this rule of right, which he talks about, and it's considered where the line between popular and unpopular styles are divided. So he lists spice, quote unquote, or identity, which can be used in major or more recognizable popular styles. So that's going to be aspects we all know and recognize, normally stuff relating to fundamentals, but obviously that can branch out to different things like coloring styles and such. And then minor aspects or less recognized / popular styles, it's important to add in effects and aspects that appeal to the general public or major elements to convey the illustration properly. Whew. That was a lot of talking. And ideally, when drawing either, adding popular aspects to appeal to the general public should be a priority. So regardless of your style, you should be trying to incorporate aspects within your works for your portfolio that will naturally draw in people regardless of the style. That way, regardless if you're drawing for yourself or if you're drawing to a standard and trying to make it a little bit more appealing to the general public or your employers, it's still an alluring illustration to the eye. The basics of character design are a necessity for character illustration, no duh, and the conceptualization of drawing is difficult and more acquired than drawing ability. And those are 2 points that he really just kind of notes, just something to keep in mind. So mainly the 3 divisions of illustration that he wants to go over is going to be character illustration, which is going to include things like concept art, or what he calls design sheets, which are mainly for the sake of conveying information. So think like 3D modeling. Those modelers need illustrations and concept art of the character that they're modeling, and especially to really understand the volume and form, since they're changing and adding a dimension to this idea. Portrait illustration, which is a broad consideration, usually with backgrounds, so stuff like game illustration is a big aspect. And he notes that design is the most important aspect for portraits. How does your eye for illustration really show in your work? So that's going to be tasteful things like spatial awareness and descriptive skills. What can you show without telling? And things like full illustrations or illustrations with full backgrounds. So that's going to include not only just an illustration, but it's going to have aspects of mood / screen composition as well as lighting. Very important factors that he notes. And then a sub option, which he lists, which is fan art, which can also be full illustrations. I just threw this in here as a note of how he considers it and how his perspective in the industry sees it. I think fan art is just as much, sometimes if not more impressive than industry standard stuff, but I digress. When composing illustration, it is important to consider the composition, or where the quote-unquote screen lies in the scene. So if you imagine the scene in your head, where would the camera be and where would it be looking and orienting itself? Oh, coffee break. And then Chyan goes in the lecture a little bit more into industry level stuff. He talks about how the line between concept art and illustration is actually beginning to thin. So character quote-unquote charm can actually be applied to all forms and is important in establishing a notable or impressionable character. And he talks about how stuff that's cute or stuff that's cool has really started to proliferate the industry. And obviously there's a spectrum on that, but it's starting to push more and more into the cute versus cool aspect. And then he lists that to get a job or to be a professional freelancer, specification in one of these fields for emphasis study is important. So really, he talks about this idea, and I think it's listed later, but it's like if you have fundamentals and coloring, a whole bunch of different aspects that make you an artist at different levels. In order to push you to an industry standard where you're doing work and getting paid to do so, at least one of those skills has to be at a point where it can be recognized as skillful, rather than as an amateur level, or rather all those aspects at an amateur level. You have to be good at least one thing to really start seeing monetization, essentially. And he notes that the breakdown, that how he recognizes a lot of the art that he sees and that he works with is mainly regarding commercial art. Obviously, this is completely out of the window if you're just drawing for fun. Draw whatever you want, obviously. But this is more so his viewpoint and how he sees things in the industry that he works in. And then he gives some practical tips about passion, goals, and such. He lists that setting goals accurately and achieving them helps increase improvement, which we have all known. It's good to set goals, both in art and in general. I hope you guys all have set some good quality New Year's resolutions that are working well, especially if you're in the art field. Remember to keep up on your drawing, and consistency is very important. But I digress, and I'm one to talk to. Ideally, skills just improve, but it is a struggle that bounces between relevancies, which is why choosing a focus as a goal makes focused improvement quicker. So instead of trying to scramble around, trying to pick up one thing, work on it, set it down, and pick up another thing and restart the whole process, you're really being intentional with your actions on what you choose to pick up, what you're studying, and what you're taking away from that. So the aspects of your skill, things like drawing, color, composition, will grow at uneven paces, and one might be the deciding factor for qualification to a job, but it is important that all skills reach over that bar that I mentioned prior, or the minimum level of qualification overall. So deciding a focus helps reach that minimum in the respective focus quicker, helps you get to an industry standard where you can really show something off that'll illustrate that you're at that level where you can really start receiving monetization for your work. And then, like I said, if it's just a hobby, have fun. And then he goes over a little bit about how style and references influence us. So he talks about personality as he lists it, which is changes with likes and preferences that reflect in drawing, which are subject to change over time. Realistically speaking, your style isn't something that's going to be cemented in time. It's going to change, and it's going to be influenced by many other factors, and that's something to just kind of acknowledge and accept. But because of that, he acknowledges that references are really, really important, and setting quality references are going to help push that style to a point where you would like it to be. So at the very least, know what you like so you can keep it in mind your strengths while drawing to improve upon them, and keeping in mind your weaknesses. So he really focuses on this idea that, you know, obviously work on what you're bad at and try to improve those, but your strengths are your strengths, and by playing to those, you can really push yourself to a point of commercial art faster. He talks a lot about motive and using it to set goals. So who do you want to be like, and what parts do you want to resemble of them? So this is really bringing in those references, those reference artists, and aspects, drawing from them to really mix together and make your own style, which is talked about all over the internet, and he talks about it here. He goes into way better detail, so if you have the course, I would highly recommend going and listening to the end part of lecture 1. It really is helpful to understand a little bit more about motives and references and how those help timeline and streamline things. And he talks about how style guides work, which motives and role models will get you to where you want to be, and really how both those references can be a good logical tool and a good motivational tool to help you keep going. I actually just ordered 3 of Lack's art books. He's one of my favorite artists of all time, and is a huge reference of mine that I use. I will list links to them if you're interested. Here's some art of his. I'll throw some up here. It's awesome. I'll also link his channel. Hopefully he might be a good reference for you too if you're interested in that kind of thing. And then his last point was being deliberate in your illustration goals / milestones, and how it's advantageous to those who don't and helps improve quicker. So really, by nailing one thing at a time, it's kind of like the idea of the debt snowball in financial aid. You have multiple loans, essentially, and you can break them down, and realistically speaking and logically speaking, it makes the most sense to knock out those that have the highest interest rate first. But it can be more motivational and actually help you to work harder by knocking out loans with a lower balance, because you see that you have less loans and debts overall. So it's a really good tool for setting goals and milestones, reaching them, and using that sort of swing and full motion that you get, the fun druggies in your head that you get that release, like serotonin, dopamine, all that other stuff, to propel you forward and keeping you on drawing. So as a summary, he is Chyan. The goal is to draw things as you envision them and to be clear about your path. Those are the 3 big takeaways from his lecture from 1.1, and hopefully it is a good takeaway for you as well. And then the self-assigned homework that I did, I found 5 to 10 artists from the fields of illustrative interest and clarify why they are motivations for your drawing. This helps set aside the aspects that you really admire about them and what you might want to take into your own style. So I have some artist lists here. I will set links for all of their socials below, but otherwise I'll leave that to you, the viewer, if that interests you. And then obviously 1.2 is coming up next. I hope that this section review was helpful for you. Hopefully you can see that if this is something that you're interested in, this is sort of the sort of conversational topics he's going to be covering for most of the lectures and the work that he's going to be going through in the backgrounds overall as like an overarching theme. If not, hopefully you still find some value and resources in what I can't cover, which is going to be the downloadables, as well as a lot of the more detailed descriptors and a lot of the personal work that you can see the lecturer doing, rather than just me sitting here and reading it off of a document. So hopefully that helps. I will see you guys in section 1.2 if you choose to continue, and I hope you guys have a good day.